We're going to stick with politics this block. The Republicans have taken control of the United States Senate, and with 40 races yet to be called, the Republican Party are 13 seats away from possibly taking control of the House as well. If Republicans do take control of all three, the House, the Senate, and the presidency, which they've already won, you would see a similar situation to what we've had in the state of Minnesota, where total party control made it easy for Democrats to pass bills forwarding their agenda. Only in this scenario, it flips to what Republicans want on the national level. But let's go back to our state. That total party control could be in question. While Democrats still have a one-seat majority in the state Senate, as of right now, Republican gains have tied them in the House. And a tie in the House is something that has not happened in this state in more than 40 years. And the balance of power could depend on some of the results of recounts. For more, here's Gordon Severson.
The Minnesota State Capitol is filled with big personalities and lengthy debates. But which party has control next year could be decided by a very small number of voters.
My breath is still being held. We are in a very, very close battle.
U of M political professor Larry Jacobs says right now there is a dead even tie in the Minnesota House with 67 Republicans and 67 Democrats.
If a tie happens, how rare is that?
It's really rare. You got to go into the history books.
According to the Minnesota legislature's website, the last time this happened was in 1979. Since there was no clear majority, neither party could claim the Speaker of the House. The Secretary of State took over the role temporarily until the two parties worked out a deal. But records show that deal fell apart in the final days of the session as the two parties battled over control. Jacobs says history could repeat itself if the tie in this election is ultimately upheld.
The first question will be, well, who's going to be the Speaker? Who are going to be in the committees? How are the committees going to operate?
But there's a decent chance that tie will be broken. Two of the races are incredibly close. In District 14B in St. Cloud, the race was decided by just 28 votes. In District 54A in Shakopee, 13 votes. In both races, election officials are preparing for a recount. Interesting enough, in both races, the margin of victory is smaller than the number of write-in votes. So if those voters would have chosen a side, the races could have ended differently.
I think it's just another good reminder of why it is so important to vote, because in this situation, every vote counted.
It's a few dozen votes. And this is at a 40,000 cast. And so if you think about your extended family might show up for a reunion, it's that kind of difference.
Jacobs says the impact of those few votes extends far beyond the Minnesota House.
The Democrats have been able to hold the one seat that was up in the Senate, so they're going to have their one seat majority in the Senate. The governor, of course, Tim Walz, is back, and so the Democrats have got two of the three.
The Democrats would have had a clean sweep of all three bodies if it weren't for just a handful of votes in those two close races.
Overall, it's good news for the Republicans because if it's a tie or they have the majority, they're going to be able to block the Democrats.
So if everything stands, could history repeat itself? Jacobs says we could be facing another chaotic session at the state capitol, like we did back in 1979.
I would hope that there would be some effort on some issues to find agreement, but the reality is that the game plan for Republicans is to stop the Democrats. They don't want to see spending. They don't want to see taxes being increased. I don't think it's malice. I think it's just very different political agendas.
Now, both of these close races could head to a recount. I spoke with election officials in Scott County and Stearns County, and they say the recounts will likely happen between November 20th and December 2nd. They're hoping to lock down a date later this week. But either way, we may not know who has control over the Minnesota House until the end of the month.
And before I ask you another question, Gordon, does it take that long because they wait for certification of those counts before they do the recount?
Yeah, there's a canvassing period that has to take place. The Secretary of State's office has to get involved. So that's kind of what's driving the dates here for both of these possible recounts.
And lastly, while those two races are razor thin, others in the House were really close as well, right?
Yeah, there was about a half dozen or so races in the House that were decided by a few hundred votes. I think one of them was about 160 votes, but I'm told it's less likely that any of those will go to a recount. With these two very close races, they're within a margin of 0.5%, and that margin is important because with that kind of a margin, these candidates wouldn't have to pay for the recount themselves. With these other races that are a few hundred votes that separate them, those candidates would likely have to pay for it out of their campaign money.
All right, thanks, Gordon.